Hello? Welcome to Night, where the dark speaks and true stories haunt. This channel brings you real horror experiences, urban legends, and chilling encounters that people have truly lived through. Every episode is based on actual stories, told in a way that pulls you into the shadows. From haunted houses to unsolved disappearances, strange family secrets to ancient curses, we explore the kinds of stories that leave you questioning what's real. Perfect for late night listening or a lonely commute home. Subscribe and let the night in. If everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world. Story 1. I married the woman of my dreams. Now my life is a nightmare. I saw her in math class one day. She was new to school and was immediately the most popular girl in class. Even then I knew she was my soulmate. I was 6, so I didn't have the words to describe my feelings. I stood in front of her, as red as a fire engine, just tripping over my words. I got frustrated and walked away. We didn't speak again for about 20 years. I watched her for those many years in school and thought I'd never see her again when we graduated. It was a Thursday in August when I saw her again. I was in the office. Typical work day. Just setting up insurance policies for elderly. I don't know what drew me to insurance. Maybe my name? I'm Jake, by the way. I wear khakis. She came in, and even with the years it has been, I recognized her like it hadn't even been a day. She sat at the desk across from me and began to explain that her husband had passed away, and she was there to collect a check to cash in his policy. I felt empathy for her, even though the man she married wasn't me. A slithering, disgusting part of me lit up in my skull. My turn. I took down her personal contact information to communicate anything she'd need regarding the insurance. When she left, I stealthily copied her information on a scrap of paper and shoved it into my pocket. Weeks went by. Occasionally, I'd dial her number into my phone and just hover my thumb over the little green button. I never had the courage to actually call. Then, one day in November, my phone rang. I never saved her number, but I dialed enough that I recognized it when it flashed on my screen. Gracelessly, I lurched the phone and fumbled to answer it. I managed a shaky hello and was met with the sound of a torrent. She bawled on her side of the phone. She was unintelligible for a few minutes, but calmed eventually. She talked about how she's hated being alone, couldn't work up to dating, and just needed someone to talk to. My turn. I asked if she wanted to meet up for coffee and just talk. Catch up. I thought she might not have remembered me when we met at the office. We had coffee on a brisk morning in November, and we were married in January. She had always been the woman of my dreams, even when I couldn't interpret the feeling. She had always been perfect, like she had been made to set the example for beauty. We've been together for about 5 years now, and until recently, things were indistinguishable from a perfect little storybook ending. But it wasn't the end. Not yet. A girl, probably 17 or 18, came into the office one morning looking for a comprehensive policy for the car she just started driving. Toward the end of our interaction, she called me cute and went about her business. I didn't think much of it. When I got home, Ella, my dream wife, waited for me. As we sat down for dinner, she was staring at her phone. Her words stabbed into the silence and made me jump a little. "Who's this?" she asked flatly, sliding her phone across the table to me. The image on her phone was from the CCTV at the office. The girl sitting across the desk from me. I explained it was nothing, just car insurance. With one narrow finger, she tapped the screen and the image came to life. The girl's voice calling me cute hung in the air between us. Ella was visibly angry now. I tried to explain myself, but found there was nothing I could say to placate her. It was literally nothing, but I hated seeing her upset. So, reading the room, I started insulting the girl, calling her ugly and dumb. It hurt me to insult people, even strangers, but I'd do anything to make her happy. Seemingly satisfied, she sat back in her chair, a little smile on her face. Good. The only thing that left her mouth. I was a little rattled from the potential discord in our matrimony and resumed my dinner. As I put a forkful of the meat and pasta dish into my mouth, I noticed it. A hair, golden and long, My wife and I both have dark hair. I glanced up to see if she noticed my discovery. She just sat there with a knowing smirk, sending a chill down my spine. After dinner, she went to bed, and I stayed up as always to watch TV and wind down before bed. When I heard the bedroom door close behind her, I sprung up to my feet. We keep all our meat in a chest freezer in the basement, and a sick feeling in my stomach urged me to investigate it. The stairs creaked under me as I deckhanded, until the hard concrete floor met my house shoe. I crept up to the freezer and lifted its lid. The contents made me step back and stifle a scream. Tried as I might, I couldn't stop the vomit from spilling out between my fingers. Wrapped up in tidy little paper packaging was a pile of new meat. I wouldn't have been able to identify it if not for the severed head, bruised and bloody, resting atop the pile. Something stopped my backward momentum, and I spun fast to see what had stopped me. Ella, she stood there grinning. She told me I was hers, nobody else's. Don't be like Greg. Don't do what he did. I don't think I could bear to be alone again. It sounded like a thinly veiled threat. I just responded with a weak, yes, dear. That seemed to satisfy her. Her voices dropped back to her regular comforting cadence. She ushered me to bed, being the calm and comfortable, beautiful woman I married. I don't know what she'd do to me if she knew I wrote this, but I don't want to end up like Greg. Story 2. My psychiatrist said the man I see behind me is a hallucination. She was wrong. I haven't looked at my own reflection properly in weeks. Not in a mirror, not in a shop window, not even the dark screen of my phone before it lights up. Because when I do, he's there, standing right behind me, watching. It started about a month ago after the incident at the beach. I used to be a lifeguard. It wasn't a career, just a summer job to pay the bills. Most days were boring. Kids running, people forgetting sunscreen, the occasional jellyfish sting. Routine stuff. But that day was different. There was an old man. He seemed confused, disoriented. He kept wandering toward the water, fully clothed. I gently guided him back toward his family, who seemed exasperated, explaining he had dementia. This happened a few times. I got busy with a kid who'd scraped his knee. Took my eye off the old man for maybe 10 minutes. Max. That's all it took. When I looked up again, he was out there, way out, beyond the breakers, where the water gets deep and treacherous. He wasn't swimming. He was flailing, his head bobbing under the waves. Panic etched on his face. I blew my whistle, grabbed my float, and sprinted into the surf. The water was cold, the current strong. I swam as hard as I could, my arms burning, my lungs screaming. But I was too late. By the time I reached the spot where I'd last seen him, he was gone. Just the empty, indifferent gray water. We searched for hours. His body washed up a mile down the coast the next morning. The guilt was immense, crushing. It was my job to watch, to protect, and I'd failed. I hadn't noticed him in time. If I'd just been more vigilant. A few days after the funeral, it started. I was brushing my teeth, staring blankly into the bathroom mirror. And there he was, not in the mirror exactly, but behind my reflection, the old man. His skin was bloated and pale, the color of wet parchment. His eyes were hollow, dark pits. His clothes were soaked, clinging to his thin frame. And he was just looking at me, not accusingly, not angrily. Just looking, like he was waiting for something. I splashed water on my face, thinking I was overtired, stressed. But when I looked again, he was still there, clearer, almost. It wasn't just the bathroom mirror. It was any reflective surface. A puddle on the sidewalk after it rained. The shiny chrome of a car bumper. The dark surface of my morning coffee before I stirred in the milk. Every time I caught my own reflection, there he was. A silent, bloated passenger standing just over my shoulder. Always the same expressionless, hollow-eyed stare. Always looking right at me. I tried to ignore it. To tell myself it was just stress. A vivid manifestation of my guilt. But he was so real. The way the waterlogged fabric of his shirt seemed to sag. The the faint, almost imperceptible blue tinge to his lips. Details my mind shouldn't have been able to conjure so vividly. Sleep became a battlefield. I'd close my eyes and see him, floating in the darkness behind my eyelids. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, convinced he was standing in the corner of my room, just out of sight. My appetite vanished. I lost weight. The world started to feel thin, unreal, like a poorly projected image. Eventually, I broke down and went to a psychiatrist. I felt like a fool trying to explain it. I keep seeing the man who drowned. In Reflections, the psychiatrist, a kind woman with tired eyes, listened patiently. She nodded a lot. She called it a grief-induced hallucinatory manifestation. A fancy way of saying my guilt was making me see things. She prescribed some mild anti-anxiety medication and gave me some advice. The most important thing, she said, her voice calm and reassuring, is to try and break the association. Avoid looking at reflective surfaces for a while. Consciously turn away. When the guilt starts to fade, when you begin to process the trauma, these visions, they will lessen. They'll go away. It sounded too simple, but I was desperate. So I tried. I really tried. I covered the mirror in my bathroom with a towel. I avoided shop windows. I learned to shave by feel. I stopped drinking coffee from dark mugs. It was difficult, living in a world where I had to constantly avert my gaze from my own image, but I was determined to make him go away. For a week, it almost seemed to work. I wasn't seeing him because I wasn't looking. The meds took the edge off my anxiety. I started to sleep a little better. I thought, maybe she's right. Maybe this is just my mind playing tricks on me. And then things got so much worse. It was evening. I was walking home from the grocery store. The sun was setting, casting long, distorted shadows on the pavement. I glanced down at my own shadow stretching out in front of me, and he was there. Not a reflection, but shadows superimposed over mine, standing just behind it. And this time there was something new. He seemed closer. Not physically close in the shadow, but the feeling of him was more intense, more present, like he'd taken a step towards me in whatever spectral space he occupied. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just water reflections anymore. Over the next few days, it escalated. I'd see him in the faint reflection on my TV screen when it was off, in the polished surface of a tabletop, in the glint of my own glasses, if I caught them at the wrong angle. And every single time, he was a little bit closer. His shadowy form in my shadow was no longer just behind me. It was almost merging with mine. The feeling of his presence was becoming oppressive, a constant weight on my chest. The psychiatrist's advice had backfired spectacularly. Avoiding reflections hadn't made him go away. It had made him adapt, spread, like a stain. I stopped taking the medication. It wasn't helping. This wasn't a hallucination I could medicate away. This was something else, something real. And I realized something. Something I hadn't told the psychiatrist. Something I hadn't told anyone. The old man, when he was drowning, I hadn't been too late. That's the lie I told myself. The lie I told everyone. The truth is, I reached him. I saw the panic in his eyes, felt his frail, desperate hands clawing at me as he fought for air. I had him. I could have pulled him in. I could have saved him. But I didn't. You see, being a lifeguard, it presents opportunities. People are vulnerable in the water, unsuspecting. And I have the hobby, a very particular kind of hobby. It started a few years ago. A need, a curiosity, to see what it felt like, to watch the light go out of someone's eyes, knowing I was the cause. My first was a drunk who'd passed out too close to the tide line late one night. Easy. Messy, but easy. After that, the guilt was different. Not like this. It was a sharp, almost exhilarating thing. A secret power. And it faded quickly, especially after the next one. Each new experience, each new type of ending I orchestrated, seemed to cleanse the palate, so to speak. The thrill of the new, the challenge. It pushed the old memories down. The old man, with his dementia, his helplessness. He was a new type, so vulnerable, so trusting, even in his confusion. It was supposed to be interesting, a new texture for my collection. I held him under, just for a moment longer than necessary, watched the last bubbles escape his lips. Then I let go and played the part of the grieving, failed lifeguard, this spectral presence, this constant, watery accuser. This had never happened before. With the others, there was nothing, just the quiet satisfaction of a completed project. But him, he was clinging to me, or I was clinging to him. I decided psychiatrist was wrong, but maybe the underlying principle was right. I needed to break the association, but not by avoidance, by repetition, by overlaying this bad memory with a new one, a fresh experience. That's what had worked before. That's how I'd managed the lingering thoughts after the first time. I needed to get back on the horse, so to speak. So I went back to the beach. Not the same one. A different one a few towns over. I got my old lifeguard certification renewed. No questions asked. I needed to be in that environment. I needed the opportunity. For a week, I sat in the chair, scanning the waves, my skin crawling. Every ripple on the water, every glint of sun showed him to me. Still there, still watching. Closer now, his face almost touching my reflection's shoulder, his hollow eyes staring directly into mine. But I forced myself to look, to endure it. I was waiting. Then I saw her, a young woman, swimming alone, far out from the shore, away from the crowds. She was a strong swimmer, but she was isolated, vulnerable, perfect. This was it. This would fix it. A new memory to overwrite the old. I stood up, grabbed my float, my heart pounding with familiar, dark excitement that almost drowned out the dread. I jogged toward the water's edge. This time, I wouldn't be too late. This time, I'd be perfectly on time. The first wave washed over my ankles. Cold. And then it happened. It wasn't a cramp. It wasn't a stumble. It was hands. Icy, impossibly strong hands, erupting from the sand beneath the shallow water, clamping around my ankles like manacles. They were bone-chillingly cold, and their grip was like iron. I cried out, a strangled yelp, and looked down. There was nothing there, just the water swirling around my legs. But the grip was real. It was pulling me down, pulling me towards a deeper water. Panic, raw and absolute, a kind I'd never experienced before, exploded in my chest. This wasn't part of the plan. I thrashed, kicking, trying to break free, but the hands held firm, their grip tightening, dragging me deeper. The water was up to my knees, then my waist. I could feel the sandy bottom dropping away beneath my feet. I screamed, a real scream this time, not the performance I perfected. I clawed at the water, at the air, fighting against the invisible force that was trying to drown me. For a terrifying moment, I thought this was it. This was how it ended. The hunter becoming the hunted. With a final, desperate surge of adrenaline, I threw myself backwards, towards the shore, towards the solid ground. The hands resisted for a moment. Then, with a reluctance that felt almost like a sigh, they released me. I scrambled back onto the wet sand, gasping, coughing, my body trembling uncontrollably. I lay there for a moment, the sun beating down on me, the sound of the happy, oblivious beachgoers a million miles away. Then, slowly, I pushed myself up and looked at the water. He was there, standing in the shallow surf, as clear as daylight, not a reflection, not a shadow. Him, the old man, bloated, waterlogged, his clothes clinging to him. His hollow eyes were fixed on me. But this time, there was something new, something that sent a sliver of ice straight through my soul. He was smiling, a wide, slow, knowing smile. A smile that said, I see you. I know what you are, and you're not getting away. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't a hallucination. It was him. He was real, and he wasn't just watching anymore. He was interacting. He was protecting others from me. I didn't wait. I didn't think. I just ran. I ran from the beach, from the water, from that smiling, dead man. I ran until I reached my car, and I drove until I reached my apartment. I'm here now. The towel is off the mirror. I can't avoid it anymore. He's there, standing behind me, closer than ever. His smile is gone, replaced by that same patient, hollow-eyed stare. But now I understand it. It's not blame. It's a promise. What do I do? How do I get rid of him? I can't go back to the beach. I can't go near the ocean. But what if that's not enough? What if, like before, he adapts? What if he starts appearing not just in reflections, but in the room with me? What if those hands aren't confined to the water? I thought I was the predator. I thought I was in control. But I was wrong. I'm haunted. I'm marked. Story 3. On my birthdays, my family prohibited me from looking into any mirrors. Ever since I was little, my family, my mom, dad, and sister, had one strict rule on my birthday. I wasn't allowed to look into any mirror. No explanations. No answers. Just a house full of covered mirrors and vague warnings. By the time I turned 16, I'd given up asking. My mom would always cover every mirror with white sheets before midnight and send me to bed early, like clockwork. I stopped trying to peek. But that year, she forgot one. It was just past 1 a.m. I'd gotten up to drink water and, half asleep, turned on my phone's flashlight. That's when I saw it. The ornate oval mirror above the basin at the end of the dining room. Floral wooden spirals surrounded the frame. My mom had picked it out herself, and she'd forgotten to cover it. I didn't mean to look, but my eyes landed on it and I froze. My reflection wasn't moving. Even when I stepped back, it just stood there, staring. Every time I blinked, it seemed closer. I wanted to run, but my legs were heavy. I couldn't look away. My mind spiraled into panic. What if it crawled out when I look away? I fumbled with my phone. Bixby called sister. The seconds it took felt like an eternity. Finally, it rang. Hello? Sis, I saw a mirror. I'm in trouble. There was a pause. Then groggily. What the foo? Sister, please, what do I do? She hesitated. Did Mom never tell you what to do, if you ever looked? No. She was shady about it. Dad avoids it. You're my only hope. Alex, look away. What? I can't. Every time I look away, it steps closer. Alexander, listen to me. Her voice changed, firm, cold. The more you stare, the more it learns. Look, away. But it's moving. Look away. Look away. Her yelling didn't even sound human anymore. My stomach dropped. In panic, I ended the call. My hands were shaking. I was panicking, exhausted, and trying not to cry. I couldn't even blink. I almost turned my gaze when I heard a familiar voice. Thank God you didn't look away. I jumped. It was my sister, in person, standing in the doorway, holding a small mirror. Sister? Why did you stop talking after I said you looked at a mirror? She asked. But I was talking to her. When I realized my guts were right, that voice at the end wasn't my sister, she stepped sideways, holding the small mirror up to the big one, and it cracked, shattering into pieces. My eyes widened as the glass shattered. What the how? My sister stood still, catching her breath. I created a loop of infinite reflection, she said quietly, holding up the small mirror. The reflection of you in this mirror is now trapped for a while, at least, and dash. She leapt back and glared at me. Stupid. Why did you look at it? I'm sorry. I stammered, but she hugged me suddenly. Tight. If I wasn't warned, it would have replaced you. Don't look at any mirrors today. No matter what. I nodded, still trembling, hugging her back. Then she whispered, or you'll end up like your sister, stuck in the mirror. That sentence still haunts me, because after that night, she acted like her usual self. She never brought up again. And even now, I'm not sure how long I can stay quiet. Not when something feels wrong living with her under the same roof. Story 4. Rule 7. Don't leave the amusement park before 6 a.m. TikTok challenges often have been filled with dangerous trends that have led many to an early grave. My town had a local challenge of its own, and it was similar in that nature. We called it the Frankfurt's Fun Park Challenge, which involved going to a nearby abandoned amusement park and following the 7 rules. It got its name from a boy named Johnny Frankfurt who died there in an accident. However, I changed the name to help hide the park's location. The exact details of the case were never revealed to public. All we know is that they had a closed casket funeral. His family later moved away from this town, and as far as I know never looked back. No one's heard from them since. That accident caused the amusement park to be officially shut down as it was deemed unsafe for the public, as they already were being investigated for dangerous malpractices. Children went missing constantly, and they had an issue with keeping enough workers on the job, as there was a high turnaround. Many who quit spoke of scary experiences at the park and felt unsafe. Not too long after this accident, there arose the Frankfurt Fun Park Challenge. In the challenge, you are supposed to stay in the park from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. at night. Sounds easy enough, but there's a twist. There is a specific list of rules you are meant to follow. The list seemed to grow as the challenge did, but some rules seem to be more words of advice. This is the list of the 7 rules. Rule 1. Make sure you enter with your face painted. This will be your disguise. Rule 2. Don't look at your reflection in the house of mirrors. Rule 3. Don't speak to performers. Anyone in the park besides you are not real. Rule 4. If a ride turns on, then you're required to ride it, with exception of the Ferris wheel. Don't ride the Ferris wheel. Rule 5. Don't mention Frankfurt's name. Rule 6. You will hear laughing coming from the funhouse. Enter in and laugh until it stops. If you don't laugh, then it'll think you don't belong. Rule 7. Leaving before 6 a.m. is not an option. You'll be trapped here forever if you go for the exit before 6 a.m. It is a false exit. You and 1 6 a.m. hits and are free to leave. My group of friends and I aren't the sharpest tools in the shed, and with a bit of peer pressure from each other, we decided to give it a try. We picked a clear sky on a Friday night to enter during the summer, so we wouldn't have to worry about the weather. All 3 of us dressed in black and were standing next to our car, which we parked about a half a mile away from the park to avoid suspicion, as it was illegal trespassing to enter the park and could result in hefty fines. We weren't afraid, but high on adrenaline, as it had been a minute since the last time we did something this stupid. We decided to paint different Marvel characters as our face paint. I was Spider-Man, Jake was Captain America, and Greg was Wolverine. After a crappy paint job, we chucked the paint into the car and locked it as we headed towards the park. It was exciting while walking the woods towards the park. The 3 of us were cracking jokes back and forth and doing the usual antics of teenagers until we finally came upon the fence. Rusty and disheveled, it swayed in the wind. Jake smiled as he said, "Let's do this," while sliding underneath the fence. I followed after him with a smile. As we got to the other side, Greg stood there, his smile wiped off his face. I have a bad feeling about these guys. I don't think we should. I mean, you've heard the news articles before. People have died doing this challenge, Greg mumbled. You really think the stories are true? Come on, Greg, you're better than that. I replied, why did we bring the list of rules with us if you don't believe them? Greg asked concerned. Because we want to do this thing right, and half of them are just not doing something which is easy. Come on, stop being a big baby and get over here, Jake said with a smirk, gesturing his hand for Greg to come. No, that feeling just became stronger. I'm not crossing that fence. I'll be back at the car, waiting for when you guys finish. I'm sorry. I thought I'd be brave enough, but I just can't, Greg said while turning away and heading back toward the car. Come on, Greg, you can't dip now, I said in a sad tone. Have fun, he replied while waving his hand. Jake and I looked at each other, and I felt an uneasiness come upon me. However, according to the rules, it was too late to back out once you entered the park. So I pushed forward. I pulled the list of rules that we had stumbled upon at school. Well, we already can mark off Rule 1, as we got face paint on. That was easy, so what should we do now? Jake asked, we should go check out the old coasters they got. I said, and Jake smiled as we headed towards them. We ran to the first one we saw, which was called Turning Tables. This one had round tin carts with seats inside, which surrounded a wheel. The ride itself would spin the carts around in large circles, and you could make your cart spin fast as you grabbed the wheel together and twisted. This may be broken, but I bet we could still hand spin that thing, Jake said excitedly while jumping inside. I followed after him, and he was right. We spun in place until we both felt sick. Laughing, we stopped and let our heads catch up with our surroundings. We did this a few more times until we grew tired of it, and so we just sat and talked for a bit. I thought this would be more exciting. Already an hour has passed and nothing scary has happened. The closest thing to something scary was Greg ditching us, but that's just because he's a scaredy cat, I said. Yeah, low-key has been disappointing, but maybe that's a good thing, Jake replied. He sat there silent until a grin swept across his face. What if we broke one of the rules and see what happens? Then we wouldn't technically win a challenge, and I want that title. Who would know? We'd be fine. It'll be so boring if we're just wandering the whole night. I'll tell you what, if it gets to 3 a.m. and nothing has happened, then we can, but until then, let's just chill and explore some more places. I replied. Jake agreed, and we started walking the park again. Observing the broken down roller coasters and rusting rails, we wandered through the park. That's when we heard the laughter. Jake glanced at me as if to see if I could hear it too. In shock, we walked closer to where it was coming from. As we got closer, we saw the funhouse, and I immediately remembered the rule. I began to laugh and nudged Jake, and he followed suit as we walked inside of it. Its old white, yellow, and red colors were covered in cobwebs and strains of dirty rainwater. As we entered, we saw a figure inside who was laughing as well. Freaked out, Jake and I just stood still laughing along, but not knowing what to do. It was tall and seemed to drape over us. The figure turned to look at us, and upon further inspection, I noticed that it was just another teen like us. The laughing proceeded to end, and all of us just stood there awkwardly. So, you guys doing challenge as well? I asked. The tall dude nodded, but there was a tear that fell from his eye. It's real, he said. This isn't some sort of joke. It's real. What do you mean? Jake asked. My girlfriend, Taylor. We dared her say the kid's name. She did, and then it came for her. What did? I don't know, but it lurked in the shadows, and there was no escaping it. It's still watching me, the man replied, trying to keep himself from bursting out in tears. Jake and I looked at each other as fear swept across our expressions. Neither one knew how to respond, but we both could tell we wanted to get out of there. Here, you want to stick with us? I asked. Wiping away the tears, he nodded and followed us out of the tent. That's when the nearby Space Crusade coaster turned on. All of us proceeded to get on it. And all I could think about was how smart Greg was to dip. There was nothing more in the world at the time that I wanted then to go home. Jake looked as if he thought the same. Emotionless, we rode the coaster. It was rickety and uneven, but came to a halt after 30 seconds. We hopped off and stood without talking. I decided to break the silence and asked the man, "What's your name?" "David," he replied, still trying to hold back the tears. He wiped his nose with his sleeve. His name felt familiar, but I couldn't put a pin in it. I then asked, "So are you from around here?" "Yeah, I go to Middle Creek High School. I'm graduating at the end of this year. I need to get out of here, but I haven't been able to find the exit yet," he replied. Jake glanced at me confused. Middle Creek High School had closed down 10 years ago as it merged with Capitol High School due to budget cuts. That's when it clicked. David sounded familiar, and that's because a David Lane went missing along with his girlfriend years ago. I then remembered Rule 3. Don't speak to anyone, they aren't real. I leaned over to Jake and whispered what I put together, and we both decided to stop talking to him and to back away slowly. It was all adding up, which means what we feared is true then. "Hey, what's wrong? Why are you guys leaving?" David asked. Neither one of us replied, but continued to back away. "You can't leave me. I need your help. Please, please don't leave me," he screamed. My eyes began tearing up as I didn't want to leave him, but it felt like a trap. Jake and I then bolted away simultaneously. There wasn't anything we could do to help him. That's when another ride lit up and began to run next to us. Jake began to walk towards it. I, however, grabbed his arm and yanked him back. "What?" he asked. "That's the Ferris wheel. We aren't supposed to ride it." "Oh, dang. Thanks for stopping me. I would have totally hopped on. I wonder why that's a rule. Beats me, I replied. Man, I just want to go home, though. Same. What do you think about that guy David? Pretty crazy, huh? Yeah, that was unsettling, but I'm really hoping there was just a miscommunication, and maybe we confused him with the one that disappeared here years ago. I hope so, but I feel terrible for leaving him alone. It's a part of the rules. It's for the best that we just stick with each other. I finished talking while glancing on ahead. In bold letters I read, House of Mirrors. Jake then said sarcastically, "Well, let's take a gander." "Sure," I laughed while shaking my head. That's when a loud crash clattered behind us. Glancing back, we could see David running at us. Both of us booked it ahead, and as we were about to pass the House of Mirrors, as the figure became more visible ahead of us, both of us came to a stop. Not knowing what to do and with David closing the gap, we both ran into the House of Mirrors as our only escape. We both locked our eyes shut when looking up, but for the most part, just kept them pasted to the floor. It felt like we were surrounded by eyes staring at us. "Guys, why are you running from me? What's going on? Please answer me," David screamed. That's when his heavy breathing went silent. "I see you," he said. My heart stopped, but my eyes still stared directly at the floor as Jake and I were both on our hands and knees at this point. "Wait, that's not... No, stay away from me." David screamed as we heard a crash and then utter silence. We stayed put for about 5 minutes until we felt it was safe to crawl our way back to the exit. While crawling back, we felt David's leg. I tapped it while still staring directly down. There was no movement from him, so we began to crawl over him. I wondered what had happened. Maybe he passed out due to fright or something. I thought that until I saw his face. It was contorted into a twisted nightmare, with his jaw open to where it nearly was flat and his eyes sunken into dark pits. His skin was white, disgusted. We both crawled over him until we finally reached the exit, and we were able to stand up and look around as there were no more mirrors. We just need to find a place to hide and wait this out. It's 4 a.m. We only have 2 more hours to go, Jake said with heavy breaths. "You're right. That's our only hope," I added as we looked around to see if we saw anything out of the ordinary. The coast looked clear, and so we made our way to an old game booth with milk bottles and baseballs scattered around the floor. At least we got some kind of defense. Jake said while picking up a baseball, "I have a feeling those won't be much good against the things here," I said while sitting underneath the front desk, catching my breath and wondering if I was losing my sanity. Some time passed until we heard a roller coaster's theme song crackle until it turned on. Jake and I both knew what we had to do, so we headed towards it. Hopping on the ride, we rode it emotionlessly, just hoping it would be over soon and desiring to get back to safety in a hidden place. We both noticed a person in the front seat of the roller coaster. Getting off, we didn't talk to them, and they didn't talk to us. We both went our separate ways. We went back to the booth and continued to wait it out, which we did in silence, and minutes felt like hours. That's when we both saw the clown. In the distance, it just stood there looking at us. Checking the time, we only had 30 minutes until it was 6 a.m. and we'd be free. 10 minutes passed, and the clown wasn't moving, and neither were we. I held the baseball in my hands tightly, and a metal milk jug in my other. That's when the clown turned around, walking into the darkness until it fully engulfed him. Both Jake and I let out a sigh of relief until we saw over near the House of Mirrors. David's corpse was walking out of it, and his face was still contorted. Upon making direct eye contact with him, his head twisted and he bolted at us. It wasn't like the first time where he ran like an average Joe, but he was running crazed. Both Jake and I bolted, head toward the exit. I screamed as we only had a few minutes left until 6 a.m. Looking at my watch, it gave me hope that we would make it out. However, as we ran, the roller coaster next to us lit up, stopping in place. Neither one of us knew what we should do. We could make it to the exit, but if we didn't get on, we would technically be breaking a rule and didn't want to face the consequences of that choice, especially if it was like anything David went through. We jolted right and hopped on the roller coaster. Both of us looked back as the ride fastened down and around our shoulders and began. David stood at the entrance to the ride, just waiting. I was terrified for the ride to stop. I was thinking of every way to get past that thing. The ride then shuddered to a stop, and the time was 5:59 a.m. 1 minute left. Jumping off the ride after we were released from our seats, we could hear wails come from David. Looking around, I saw hundreds of exit signs, not knowing which one was right. I then felt my right leg slip out from underneath me. Jake stopped upon peering back. He took off without me. I watched him disappear as I too looked back to see David about to jump on me. As he landed on me, I felt his open jaw close on my leg. I screamed in agony as I punched at him, but he wouldn't release, until instantly he turned to ashes. Terrified and in pain, I looked at the time and it was 6 a.m. We had survived the night. I laid back, screaming in joy, until the pain in my leg reminded me that I still needed to get out of there. I shuffled to the exit, where there were 2 police cars waiting for us. Jake was there and already in handcuffs. I was never so happy in my life to be arrested. I have no idea how we made out of there, but I'm glad we did, and luckily, I made a full recovery. I walk just fine now. However, I will never forget the contorted face of David, staring at me. I wonder if he's still there, trying to find a way out. All I know is that I will never do a challenge like that again. Sometimes things are meant to be left alone. Story 5. There were 5 of us when we launched. Now, there's 2 and one of them is me. It was 5 of us in total. Me, Ty, Matt, Reese, and the pilot. His name was Rick. Old guy, maybe late 50s. Worn out hoodie. Work boots laced at the ankle. Didn't say much beyond basic safety instructions. He met us in a clearing past the last subdivision. Just this empty stretch of field that smelled like burned grass. No fences, no signs. The basket was already upright, balloon half filled and swaying. Ty booked the ride on a whim. Found it on some forum. Said it'd be about 40 minutes in the air. Sunset flight, smooth and scenic, the post said. Bring a jacket. That was all. We took off at around 7:15. Still light out, barely. The burner roared overhead, loud but somehow comforting. And the balloon rose clean. No lurch, no pull. Just a silent lift that made the whole thing feel like a trick. Rick barely looked at us once we were up, just worked the burner and adjusted the cords while we passed over houses that looked like Monopoly pieces. The air felt thick with sun-warmed silence. At first, it was fun. Ty cracked jokes. Matt was filming on his phone. Reese leaned over the edge more than I was comfortable with, spitting once just to see how long it took to disappear. I was quiet, watching shadows crawl across the ground as the light slipped west. It felt calm, until it didn't. I can't say exactly when it changed. Maybe 15, 20 minutes in? The trees looked darker, longer. The fields were endless. No more houses, no roads, just an ocean of green that turned black the second the sun dropped below the hills. I looked at Rick. He was still standing with one hand on the burner valve, staring ahead like he was waiting for something. His expression hadn't changed since takeoff. Ty asked, "How long until we come back down?" No response. Rick didn't move, didn't blink. Reese laughed nervously. "Hey man, you good?" Still nothing. Matt reached out and touched his shoulder. Rick didn't react. He was breathing, but stiff, frozen, like he'd fallen asleep with his eyes open. The burner fired again. Flame roared above us. We were still climbing. I could feel it in my ears. Pressure building. Wind had vanished. The trees were just a dark smear now. No lights below. No signs of life. "I think we're too high," I said. Reese stepped back from the edge. "I don't see anything anymore. No town. No glow. Should we be seeing, like, street lights or something?" Ty's voice was tighter now. "What is this, man?" Nobody had an answer. Then Rick moved. Not much. Just a shift in his weight. A small turn. His eyes scanned past us, not quite making contact. He let go of the burner. Walked to the edge of the basket. No build-up. No words. No warning. He climbed over the edge. We all froze. Ty grabbed the side. Yo, what the hell are you? But Rick was already halfway over, one leg dangling, calm as anything. And then he stepped off. Gone. No scream. No thud. No flutter clothes. Just gone. We rushed to the edge. Looked down. Darkness. At first, I thought I saw something, movement below, a shadow against shadows. Then Reese spoke, almost a whisper. There's another one. What? Matt asked. Look. He pointed. Below us, another balloon. Identical. Same striped envelope. Same wicker basket. Same shape. For figures inside. All standing. All looking up. I followed Reese's gaze upward. Above us, another, same balloon. For more figures. All facing down. None of them moved. The air got colder. Matt stepped back, shaking his head. What the fuck is this? What is this? Reese started pulling the emergency cord. Over and over. Nothing happened. We're not descending. I said, why aren't we going down? The burner hissed again. Still climbing. The four of us pressed in close now. No one talking. Just breathing harder, watching balloons above and below like mirrors in the sky. They weren't reflections. They weren't delayed. They weren't random. Each one of them was us. Same heights. Same builds. Same silhouettes. Matt spoke, voice tight. That's not possible. That's not. Shut up, Ty said. Just shut up for a second. The balloon above us was drifting lower. Slowly, like it was being drawn to us. I felt at first a low shift in the air pressure, like something large was coming toward us without making a sound. Then Reese stepped toward the edge. Matt caught his arm. Don't. Reese didn't look at him. Didn't say anything. He climbed up. I moved to stop him too late. He stepped over. Just gone. We rushed to the side. Balloon below. 3 figures now. Ty started backing into the corner of the basket, staring at us, then down, then up again. His voice was cracking. He's down there. That's him. That's Reese down there. Matt was breathing heavy. This isn't real. This is an F. This isn't real. I leaned back against the burner frame. My chest hurt. My fingers were numb. Above us, the balloon was closer. Much closer. I could make out details now. One of the figures was leaning forward, elbows on the edge, looking straight at me. He didn't blink. I think he was me. It's just 3 of us now. Me, Ty, and Matt. Reese is gone. Rick, too. The balloon keeps climbing. The one above is maybe 50 feet away now. I can see its stripes more clearly. Red, yellow, and dark green. Like ours. The envelope flickers softly in the moonless dark, almost glowing from the heat of its own burner. And the people inside, they don't move. They just stare. I tried yelling. Nothing. No reaction. Ty won't stop whispering. It's like he's talking to himself, but low and fast like he doesn't want us to hear. I saw his jacket, he says. Reese. He's wearing his jacket down there. Matt finally snaps. We don't know that. You didn't see anything. I did. Ty hisses, loud now. You just don't want to believe it. They start arguing. I can't follow it. I'm focused on the horizon. If there even is one. It's all black now. The air's thin. Cold. My skin feels dry, like my body's trying to shrink itself. And then I see the lights. Just 3, out in the dark below us. A faint glow, barely visible at first. Then clearer. A barn, wide and sagging in the middle. One side caved in. A factory, windowless except one tall smokestack, with a faint flickering light behind a window near the roof. A church, long and narrow, crooked spire pointing into the void. We pass over them. Did you see that? I ask. Matt nods. Yeah. Ty doesn't answer. He's still pacing, arms crossed tight across his chest. His lips are moving, but he isn't saying anything out loud anymore. 5 minutes pass. Maybe 10, and then the buildings come back. Same exact ones. Same broken barn. Same crooked spire. Same flickering factory window. Okay, Matt mutters. That's not possible. That's not. I counted the shingles. I whisper, it's the same barn. Ty's in the corner, knees pulled to his chest now. We drift in silence. The burner fires again. And now I realize something worse. We're not just drifting past the buildings. We're stuck on them. A loop, like a cheap simulation. Like the world below is just wallpaper. The same strip of terrain playing again and again. Where the hell are we? Matt whispers. No one answers. The balloon above, closer now. I can see the face of the one leaning over. He's got my build, my shoulders. His head tilts slightly when I move, like a reflection that's lagging. Then Matt goes still. His eyes are fixed on something behind me. Someone's coming down. I turn. From the balloon above, one figure is climbing, hand over hand, slow, down the rope netting, legs swinging slightly with the breeze. Steady, no fear in how he moves, like he knows exactly where he's going. I take a step back, heart thudding hard enough to hurt. Ty starts rocking now, mumbling something rhythmically, faster and faster. Matt stares at the climbing figure like he's frozen, and then Matt bolts. He doesn't say a word, just runs at the edge and jumps. He doesn't hesitate, doesn't cry out. Gone. I spin and grab the side. Balloon below, two figures now. Me and Ty. I stagger back. My breathing's too fast. I feel like my body's turning inside out. The figure from above is almost here. I can hear the soft creak of the rope ladder now. The wooden clunk of his foot landing on the basket. I don't want to look, but I do. He stands a few feet away. Same height, same jacket, same hands. Face in shadow, but I know it's me. He just stares, tilts his head, then tilts it back the other way. Not mocking, not curious, just copying. Ty finally screams. It's sudden and raw and loud in the dead air. He jumps to his feet and points. There's more, he yells. I look over. The balloon below? It's no longer just one. There are two, stacked, slightly offset, both rising. And above us, another has appeared. Higher still. I don't understand. It's not just one above and one below anymore. It's layers. Dozens of them. Going up, going down. Some of them have baskets filled with people. Some have none. Some have me. The one in our basket hasn't moved. Still staring. Still watching. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Ty backs away, arms trembling. Then he grabs the burner valve and yanks it. The flame shoots up with a scream of gas. He pulls again. And again. No control. Just panic. We have to get out, he mutters. It's gonna keep going. It doesn't end. I shout at him, but it's no use. He's lost in it. He steps to the edge. 1 foot over. No, Ty. He looks at me once. Just once. Then he falls backward into the dark. The balloon below, just one figure now. Me and the other. He's still staring. We're both standing here, in the same basket. The burner cuts off. No flame, no sound, no movement. We just float, above and below, copies of us. I sit down slowly, staring into black. Then I hear the wind shift, just a little. The copy of me walks over and sits beside me, not touching, just sitting. We stare out together at the horizon, where the barn, the factory, and the church repeat again for the 5th time. I'm not sure which one of us is the real me anymore. I've been writing this for a dozen or so cycles now. If you can see this, my phone now has reception, and you know what I've had to do. Story 6. The screaming started outside my room. Now it's coming from inside. It started late at night. I can clearly remember. Pam was already drifting off as we talked about how loud the music was at the concert we'd been to. After all these years of metal concerts, we agreed things have been definitely louder this time. Hell, we were even discussing getting earplugs for the next one. The Airbnb we'd picked for the night was close to the venue, but in a pretty sketchy area. One of those old buildings with long hallways and thin walls where you can hear everything your neighbors are doing. We were lying in bed, and just when I thought we'd talked ourselves to sleep after all that random rambling, the first scream came. I was almost asleep when I heard it. Heal me, please. The high-pitched cry was distant, but clear enough that it jerked me awake. It sounded like someone sobbing while they screamed, like pure desperation mixed with terror. It seemed to be coming from somewhere outside the building, maybe from the street below, but it was hard to tell with these old walls and the way sound carried through the hallways. What was that? I asked, hoping Pam was still awake. She mumbled, rolling over to face me. Did you hear that? She was quiet for a moment, listening. Sounded like, help me please, maybe? My heart started beating faster. It was 2:58 a.m. according to the nightstand clock. Who the hell would be screaming for help at this hour? That's weird, right? I said, yeah, but... Pam shrugged, though I could see she was more awake now. This isn't exactly the nicest neighborhood. There's probably homeless people around. Who knows? That made sense. The area around the venue wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. Lots of dive bars, some sketchy motels, the kind of place where you might expect to hear someone having a rough night. Still, something about the voice bothered me. It sounded so desperate. We lay there in silence for a few minutes. I was starting to think maybe it was just a one-off thing when it happened again. This time it was definitely closer. Not from the street, but from somewhere inside the building. Maybe the floor below us, or down the hallway. The sound seemed to bounce off the walls in a way that made it hard to pinpoint exactly where it was coming from. Okay, what the fuck was that? I said, sitting up in bed. It was definitely closer this time. Pam said. I could feel her tense up beside me. That sounded like it came from inside the building. That's messed up. My heart was really pounding now, but I tried to keep my voice steady. I didn't want to freak out Pam, and honestly, I didn't want to admit how scared I was getting. This kind of thing happens sometimes in my neighborhood, Pam said, though her voice didn't sound as confident as her words. You know, people having episodes, or just drunk hobos. I wanted to believe her, but something felt off. The way the voice echoed, the desperation in it. It didn't sound like a normal argument or someone just being loud. It sounded like genuine terror. We both lay there listening, but everything was quiet again. Just the occasional sound of a car passing by outside, and the building settling around us. We both lay there listening, but everything was quiet again. Just the occasional sound of a car passing by outside, and the building settling around us. Old buildings make a lot of noise, I told myself. Pipes creaking, floors shifting. Nothing unusual about that. I was starting to relax when I heard the third voice. Here, it wasn't a scream this time. It was barely a whisper, but somehow it echoed inside my head like it was being shouted through a megaphone. The word felt loud, impossibly loud, even though I could tell it was spoken quietly. This time I shot straight up in bed, my eyes wide open. That hadn't come from the hallway or another room. That had come from inside our room, from the corner near the little kitchenette. Did you hear that? I stammered. Pam didn't answer, but I could feel her sitting up beside me. I reached for the light switch on the wall behind the bed. Fumbling in the dark, I flicked it up and down several times, but nothing happened. Of course the fucking lights weren't working. Shit, I muttered, reaching for my phone on the nightstand. My hands were shaking as I felt around for it, knocking over my Kindle and almost sending my water bottle crashing to the floor. Where the hell was my phone? That's when I heard it. A whisper. So quiet I almost missed it. Help me. The voice was raspy, like someone who'd been screaming for hours until their throat was raw. But it wasn't coming from outside anymore, or from the hallway. It was coming from the corner of our room, maybe 10 feet away from where we were sitting on the bed. My blood went cold. Someone was in here, with us. I finally found my phone and fumbled with the flashlight. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady. But when the light came on, I saw something that made my stomach drop. There was a dark shape in the corner, tall, but hunched over, standing perfectly still. I couldn't make out any details. Just a human-shaped shadow that seemed to absorb the light from my phone rather than reflect it. I wanted to scream, to run, to do something, but I couldn't move. My whole body felt frozen. Like if I made even the slightest noise, whatever was standing there would notice me. My heart was beating so loud I was sure it could hear it. The shape started to move. Slowly. It felt as if time was being suspended, but also flying by, but also running out. I turned my head slightly to look at Pam, desperate to see if she was seeing this too, if she had any idea what we should do. What I saw made everything worse. Pam was sitting up in bed, but her body was facing away from me while her head was turned toward me at an impossible angle, like someone had grabbed her head and twisted it around without moving her shoulders. Her eyes were wide open, but they weren't her normal brown eyes. They were white, completely white, like someone had painted over them. The only thing I could see clearly in the darkness were those horrible white eyes, staring right at me. Then her mouth started to open, slowly, wider and wider, until her jaw was hanging open further than any human mouth should be able to go. The white glow from her eyes cast just enough light for me to see into her mouth. And it looked like it went on forever, just darkness stretching back into nothing. Then everything went black. When I woke up, it was morning. I could hear traffic outside. Normal sounds, normal light. I sat up in bed, my head pounding like I had the worst hangover of my life. Pam was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed with her back to me, brushing her hair. "My hair is such a mess," she said without turning around. "You were talking in your sleep all night. Bad dreams." Yeah, I guess," I said. My throat felt raw, like I'd been screaming. I had this really weird nightmare. "Must have been some nightmare," she said, still not turning around. "You kept saying, 'Help me,' over and over. But the weird thing is..." She finally turned to face me, and her eyes were completely white again. I wasn't asleep either. Story 7. You know that feeling when you turn off the downstairs light and race up the stairs like something's chasing you? I look back. Don't ever look back. Yeah, this is going to sound pretty damn crazy. I don't expect you to believe me. Just stick with it. But there is something else living in my house, and it is not human. We moved into a new housing estate just outside a small city in the UK. The first few nights were fine. We unpacked, redecorated, got settled. Then the weird stuff started. We would be watching TV in the living room and hear a crash from the kitchen. I would run in to find a plate smashed all over the floor. Every time I shrugged it off, it must have been on the edge of the table. It just fell off the drying rack. All of my conclusions were rational. The next night, it was a cup, then a fork. Sometimes we wouldn't even hear it. It would just be laying on the floor when me or my girlfriend got home from work. She was getting freaked out by all of this and was going to stay with her parents for a couple of nights. I just said she was being silly. There must have been a rational explanation, right? Yeah, that didn't really go too well for me. I stayed in the house and began to hear other things, like the doors upstairs opening and slamming shut. I had dismissed a lot of the things over the last week, but the other night, that had me locked in my bedroom, wide awake till morning. That night, I did my usual checks. Doors locked, windows shut, everything switched off. As I turned off the last light in the hallway, I had the fight or flight feeling, the same one I've had since I was a kid, that urge to bolt up the stairs like something's chasing me. Halfway up the stairs, I heard another set of fast-paced footsteps from behind me. My skin went prickly. I repeated to myself, "It's all in your head. It's all in your head." Then I did something I would never do. I looked back. Something was moving. All I could see were eyes reflecting off the upstairs light. They were wide and bloodshot. I couldn't see anything else, just a dark figure and those cursed eyes. I shouted out, "What the hell? Shit! Shit!" I stumbled to the top step, and then silence. The whole house quiet. I rushed into the bedroom, turned the light on, and put the TV up to full volume. That's where I stayed, freaked out and on edge. Once it was light outside, it made the house feel a lot less threatening. I went downstairs. The cupboards were all open, so it was a fridge and oven. This was too much. I wasn't going to stay here alone again. I called my brother Dan to see if he wanted to stay here for a few nights. I didn't say my reasons because it would have sounded like I was scared. He said it would be a good idea and we could get some drinks in. Last night, we had a good evening playing the PlayStation and drinking beers, only hearing the odd bump or creak. We were getting pretty drunk by the time we decided to call a night. I then told him what had happened the night before. He laughed at me and called me a pussy. I laughed it off. He headed into the spare room I had made up earlier. I went up after I had that same urge to run, but I didn't. I walked all the way to the top. Nothing happened. Was it in my head? About 3 a.m., I was woken up by a large bang downstairs. Someone then started to call my name. It was my girlfriend. What was she doing here? She hadn't come upstairs, which was weird. I text her, "Are you coming to bed?" "Be quiet. Dan's asleep in the spare room X." She texted back, "What are you talking about? I'm at my parents'." She had to be messing with me. She knew how paranoid I'd been lately. I sat up in bed, frozen, just listening. The voice, her voice, called out again. It was clearer this time. "Babe." She was almost laughing. I got up quietly. I didn't want to wake Dan or get him involved. I stepped into the hallway. The floor was ice cold under my feet. Every creak of the boards echoed in the silence. I peered down the staircase. The hallway light was still off. It was pitch black down there, but I thought I saw movement. I leaned my head out, just enough, squinting in concentration, holding my breath. Then the darkness shifted. I didn't hear anything move, but I knew it had. A face, or something was now just barely visible, right at the bottom of the stairs, watching me, still, silent. It tilted just a fraction, like it was curious or amused. I pointed my phone straight down the stairs and took a photo. The flash illuminated the staircase. I saw the two bloodshot eyes glisten from the bottom. Then it launched up towards me. I sprinted into my bedroom and slammed the door shut, locking it tight. The banging started immediately, like fists slamming against the wood. The handle rattled violently. Then it stopped. No footsteps. No noise. Just silence. I sat exhausted on the bed, my heart pounding. 2 knocks on the door, then broke the silence. "Babe, are you going to let me in?" I shouted back, "Leave me alone. You're not her." The voice calmly answered back, "What's wrong, babe? Just let me in the bedroom, please. Just go away." I yelled out. I'd had enough. I grabbed my phone and called my girlfriend. She answered after the second time of trying. "Hello, hello? Where are you?" I asked her. She sounded half asleep in her response. "At my parents', you know this, I was asleep." "Shit," I whispered through clenched teeth. "What's the matter with you? You sound out of breath." She asked now with more alertness. "Don't worry. I will come over in the morning and explain. Sorry for waking you up." I didn't want to worry her. Even I thought I was going crazy. Didn't want to drag her into it. She sighed. "Okay, can I go back to sleep now?" I hung up the phone. I just couldn't process any of this. Slow footsteps then walked away from my door and down the stairs. I stayed in my bedroom, wide awake again, until the sun glared through my curtains. This morning, everything felt strange. I hadn't slept. I unlocked the door and went over to the spare room where Dan was staying. I knocked on the door. "You up, mate?" I whispered. No answer. "Mate!" I said slightly louder while I pushed the door open. The bed was neatly made, untouched. The room was exactly how I'd left it before he arrived. Duvet still tucked in, pillows still smooth. His night bag? Gone. I stood there frozen, just thinking, what the hell's going on? I checked the bathroom, then every room in the house. Nothing. No jacket, no shoes, no sign he'd even been here. Maybe he'd left in the night for some reason. Were the footsteps I heard his? But Dan would never just leave without saying something. I kept checking the front door, hoping it just popped out. I knew he liked to run in the mornings. Around noon I gave up and called home. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual, "is Dan back yet?" My mom sounded confused. "Back? From where?" From mine, he stayed here last night. There was a long pause. Dan's been here all weekend. He's in his room now. No, he what? I picked him up. We played PlayStation. We drank Budweiser. Calm down. You must have dreamt it. Love. He didn't go anywhere. Did you want to speak to him? I didn't reply. I couldn't. I sat there, the phone still pressing my ear, staring at the front door. Sorry, Mum. No. It's okay. I must have just had a vivid dream or something. I'll speak to you later, okay? Okay, love. Love you. Bye. Love you too. Bye. I looked around my living room, the empty beer bottles still on the coffee table. I was just about to call my girlfriend when I heard a voice coming from upstairs. Mate, you downstairs? It was Dan. I jumped up and walked out the room. Dan! I called from the bottom of the stairs. Yeah, come up here, mate. My stomach dropped. Okay, mate, coming now. I shouted back. I grabbed my keys, ran out the front door. As I reached my car, I looked back up to the upstairs window. Through the blinds, two red eyes stared back at me. I couldn't have got into my car any quicker. That was it. I was not going back to that house again. I am currently staying with my girlfriend's parents. I have spoken to Dan. My mom was right. I never called him. He never came to mind. He never stayed over. I've been reading online. Something about a djinn or skinwalker. Anyone know what these are? One post said if you ever acknowledge it, it can mimic people you know or loved ones. Is that true? We are now considering putting the house back up for sale. If you have any suggestions on what we can do to get rid of it or anything to help, please reach out. This was supposed to be our forever home, but now it has turned into a living nightmare. This sounds stupid, but because I looked back that night while I thought I was being chased up the stairs. Did I acknowledge it somehow? Did I expose it? And now it knows I can see and hear it. I haven't slept more than an hour since. You know that photo I took at the top of the stairs, yeah? I caught it. It isn't much, but it's on my screen right now. I'd post it, but I'm not sure if I can on here. Story 8. There's a dilapidated bridge by my house. Something is lurking out there. I have to get this off my chest. About 3 to 4 months ago, I was a huge pothead, burning out in life, just living paycheck to paycheck, working at a smoke shop. The pay was shit, but my co-workers were cool, and the money got me my fix. I used to drive around town and look for cool smoke spots. I had found a couple of nice ones. Off the beaten path of suburbia were some pretty deserted spots with nice views. A place I call Bunker Hill, akin to a sand dune with a small pond on the other side. A spot down in the local creek where you can see the fauna of the town in their natural habitat. And then there was the burned-out bridge. The bridge was by far my favorite. It was an old wooden bridge that, as name suggests, was burned and falling into the creek it crossed, all nestled back behind a power substation on an unmarked gravel road. There were concrete barricades on both sides to stop people from trying to drive straight out the bridge, but that never stopped anyone. It was covered in graffiti, normal kid stuff. James was here, or Josh plus Brandy forever and the like. Beer cans and cigarette butts littered the area, but it was quiet, solitary, and the only noises you ever heard was cicadas and the birds in the wood around it. It seems like forever ago now. I was having a bad day. Luck wasn't on my side. Work was shit, traffic even worse, and I hit every red light on my way home. I got to the house finally, rolled up my joint, and took off the bridge to get some peace and quiet. I should have known something was off, though. Normally when I pulled the end of the gravel road, I'd just stop and park, and do what I had come to do. Today was different. Something in my gut told me I should pull around and face the car back down the road I had come. I told myself, just to make it easier when I leave. I pulled it around, got out of the car, and the calm of the woods greeted my arrival, followed by the cicadas and birds piping up again in their songs. The engine noise always quieted momentarily, like a playlist that never stopped, just paused. As I hopped the barricade and the bridge came into view, I lit my J and walked to the edge. I don't know when the fire happened, but it started in the middle on the left side, damaging the wood enough to collapse it on that side. leaving a slanted, charred husk of a time long forgotten. The creek was about 15 to 20 feet below. Looking straight ahead, you could see the tops of the small trees that grew out of the hillside. I sat and pondered life while I watched the branches sway in the wind. It was so serene. As I smoked, I could hear little twigs snapping under the weight of animals. The birds chirp and the cicada drone, and in my haze of watching the birds fly through the treetops and the squirrels spiraling up the tree trunks, I wasn't paying the utmost attention when they stopped, all except for the snapping twigs. My gut twisted in instinctual fear once I had realized it. I stood up, as if I was just finished with the scenery, as to not alert whatever was out there that was stalking, and started walking back to my car. As I passed the tree line, the bushes trembled, and I turned to see what made the noise. Hoping it was just a squirrel, I was so wrong. Standing on the open path was at first I thought to be a dog, maybe a coyote, but it couldn't be. The limbs were too long, and it was draped in tattered clothes. My brain struggled to piece together what was happening. If it was a person, why are they on all fours? Who the hell would be out here like that? Did something happen to them? Do they need help? I didn't have time to finish the train, though. That would have led me closer. It bolted forward, and I won't lie, I probably sang like a soprano as I sprinted for my car. I ran and vaulted the barricade, hearing it slapping the pavement as it ran behind me. Fuck that thing. It could get its own help. I thought as I felt the thumped of it running. It was too heavy for its frame, like it was much, much denser than it showed. It was getting close. I was starting to hear its breathing, heavy and panting, almost. It made every hair on my neck stand rigid, like my hair was trying to get away from what was to come. As I got to my car door, it stopped. I didn't hop to my driver's seat and slammed the door shut, locking the doors as quick as possible and immediately checked the side view mirrors. Nothing. Not even a shaking bush, nor a sign of that thing. What the fuck? Where did it go? I put the car in drive and floored it out of there, not wanting to find out. I got pulled over on the way back up to the main road for speeding, and I've never been happy to get a ticket until then. I told the officer everything I had seen and why I was speeding out from behind the substation. His brow furrowed in confusion. You mean to tell me some man on all fours chased you out of there? He said in a disbelieving and slightly condescending tone as he pulled down his sunglasses and looked back down the road. He wasn't convinced. I know how it sounds, sir, really, and I'll take the ticket if I have to. Just please. I need someone to check that place out. I said in an uneven voice. He agreed, handed me my ticket and said something into his radio as he tapped the top of my car. You don't have any marijuana in the vehicle, right? It definitely smells like it. Great. He thought I just got too high and freaked out. Maybe I had, but that thing's heavy bounds and panting breath made me believe otherwise. No, sir, I'll be honest. I was smoking down there, but it's all gone now. He chuckled. Shit, he definitely thinks I just freaked out. All right, well, we'll check out eventually, son, but for now, watch your speed and get out of my face. He tapped the top of my car to let me know I could leave as he walked back toward his cruiser. I got home safely, but that image was still haunting me. Why couldn't I make out what it was? Was it really that far away? I had nightmares that night where it kept replaying over and over. I didn't sleep much that night. After that night, I kept a close eye at the end of that gravel road that butted up to the substation. I passed on my way to work every day, and at first nothing. Just a tree-covered road. For a couple weeks it went like this. I ended up getting an office job on the other side of town. I couldn't even look at that road without thinking about that day. I think about it less nowadays, and my life has finally turned around. The new job, better money, no more smoking. But every now and then, when I sit on my back porch and relax, the playlist pauses, and the fear that courses through my veins is thick, like a tetanus shot. My fight or flight kicks in, and I spend the rest of the night peeking out my windows, silently praying that whatever was out there will lose interest and finally leave. It hasn't happened in a few days, only because I quit going out there. If anything else happens, I'll update. I just heard some scratching on the back door. I need to go let the dog in and get some lunch made. Story 9. I volunteer for trials in a medical research study. The tests were not what I expected. Name is Simon. I'm currently a barrister in his late 20s trying to work my way up in this life, after surviving homelessness and something probably worse. For months ago, I stepped out of the Department of Social Services building, glancing at the newspaper stash near the entrance. I then randomly picked one, hoping to sit at the corner of a peaceful street and distracted myself with any light news. This is how I saw the advert that brought a drastic change in my life. It resembled something like this. Institute Sciences ETHU's Fordran. Volunteers needed for a 6-day study on cortisol. Criteria. Age must be between 18 to 52 years old. Willing to live in the facility for the entire duration of the experiment. Payment is 8,700 euros. Interested? Please visit us at 67 Rue XXXXXXXXXXXXX 7001 or contact us on the +33X XXXXXX. I remember being surprised to stumble upon something so fancy in the newspaper. I felt lucky I felt chosen. It was not generational wealth, but such amount could allow for a great comeback. The same day, I found myself in a facility along countless other volunteers. Everything looked just the way I imagined it. Clean, fancy, and painted in white premises with futuristic decoration and devices, though smaller in size than I thought it would be. Nurses made every volunteer go through applications, then blood and urine tests. After a long wait, they asked me to come back the next day. Carla, Nolan, Vincent, and I were the only ones back at the facility that day, and we understood that we had been selected for the next phase. They looked well off. They looked clean. They had nice clothes and clearly had roofs over their heads. We bonded over our curiosity that revolved around the tests, while going through other formalities for new applications and consent. The very next day, the test continued and the nightmare began. We took our tests separately that time and under the watchful eye of Pasquale, the assistant of the doctor in charge, Dr. Benoit Fordran, who never bothered to even greet us at least once. The second test consisted of sitting completely still in a very small white hospital room and stare at a painting for at least 2 hours. It had a golden frame that gave it an aristocratic feel. As for the painting itself, it was black, completely pitch black. I was really lost. After brushing me up, feeding me and giving me new all-black clothes, I was expecting to swallow a bunch of pills and withstand a set of side effects. Instead, I was staring at darkness. Afterwards, Pasquale kept being evasive when the others and I questioned him about the nature and the purpose of the tests. Therefore, we brainstormed any possible explanation, making jokes about it and trying to keep things on the bright side. However, we realized by our descriptions that we did not exactly have the same painting to stare at. Carla had a black painting with a marble frame, while Vincent had a black painting with a silver frame. To top it all, Nolan was nowhere to be seen with no other explanation than him giving up. The third test was nearly similar to the second one, with a few major differences. I was sitting in the same room with all white clothes and with my back facing the painting. In between, there was a little ancient and golden table on which there was a vial containing a sample of my blood. Pasquale requested that I close my eyes and that I relax till the time elapses. I ended up dozing off at some point. Outrageous. I woke up at the sound of a very firm, deep and masculine voice expressing absolute anger behind me. I jumped up and turned around only to freeze when I saw that the blood vial was empty. Pasquale snapped me out of my little daze as I heard his voice through the speaker, urging me to leave the room since the test had just ended. I then thought that what I heard was from a dream or an hallucination. After a sleep riddled with nightmares, I planned to meet with the others again the next morning, but this time, there were only Vincent and I. Suspicion and dread grew into our hearts as we began sharing our experiences. Vincent told me that his vial was filled with his sweat and that it also ended up mysteriously empty at the end of the test. For the fourth and final test, I had all red clothes and was instructed to sleep in a different and more spacious room, furnished with only a mattress placed right in front of the black painting. I was getting very suspicious about all the strangeness of it, especially the focus on that black painting. I just complied once more, after all the money was a goal, and before I even lied down and closed my eyes, Pasquale dimmed the light in the room to facilitate the test. However, I couldn't sleep for a second, and with every passing minute, the weird feeling morphed into an unfounded and abject fear. A few hours later, when the discomfort became unbearable, I sat on the bed at nearly 2 a.m., almost out of breath all of a sudden. That was when I saw it. My gaze fell on the black painting, and I saw 2 yellow pupils staring back at me from the middle of the painting. I stood up immediately and tried to focus my gaze on the pupils just to make sure that I wasn't hallucinating. In response to my bewilderment, a set of sharp teeth appeared right below the pupils, where a nose was supposed to be, as whatever was in the painting smiled at me. I rushed to the door that I found locked, and started screaming for Pasquale to let me out. He did not answer. The thing in the painting didn't move each time I looked behind me. It was just staring and smiling. The moment I tried to kick open the door, the most feminine voice I've ever heard and will ever hear resounded behind me. "Don't be rude, Simon. Please, have some manners," it calmly said. Surprised by what I heard and fearing the worst, I turned around, gluing my back to the door. "Thank you for the drink yesterday. It was outrageous," the male voice I heard the day before retorted, interrupting the female voice. I shivered in fear when I saw where the male voice came from. Below the first and smiling mouth, a second one had just appeared. It had a similar set of sharp teeth clenching in an apparent expression of rage. This entity, completely wrapped in darkness, a being in which I could only see its 2 yellow pupils and sharp white teeth, had 2 mouths on its face, each with its own personality. "Don't mind him, Simon. He's always in a terrible mood." The female smiling mouth spoke. "Why wouldn't I? Look at this pathetic weakling. Where does Benoit find these worthless brats?" "Weakling? Definitely. Worthless? I don't think so," the female voice observed. Who are you?" I let out quietly, ignored by it or them. "Your greed will be our doom." The male voice spoke as I turned around again to bang on the door in desperation, begging Pasquale to open the door. The 2 voices continued their discussion behind me, while I screamed, yelled, kicked to get away from that hell in vain. Once again, I turned around to face the entity. They had stopped talking to each other and just stared at me with their shared eyes. The female mouth still smiling and the male mouth still clenching his teeth. "Do you want to get out?" the male voice asked. I just nodded, my back still glued to the door. "Well, be a man," he added. "Here, dear." The female voice spoke as a hand emerged from the painting, holding a golden key. I stayed far away from them, and the entity remained still and silent. I tried to break the door once again to no avail. I called for Pasquale or anybody who could hear me in vain. I ended up sitting on the floor and even tried to negotiate my way out with the entity. I suggested that they just throw the golden key to me, but they remained still and silent, as if frozen in time. I probably stayed in there for several days battling fear, hunger, and tiredness, until I understood that I did not have any other choice. Hand extended, I approached cautiously, my heartbeat and my breath accelerating. The entity had not moved an inch. My legs and extended hand trembled the more I advanced towards him, and I am not ashamed to admit that I was on the verge of urinating on myself. When my fingers almost reached the key, the yellow pupils of the entity grew brighter in excitement, as it couldn't even conceal its body language. I put my hand below the key, silently begging them to drop it into my palm, and they surprisingly granted my wish. However, before the key even touched my skin, I felt a firm grip on my wrist, and the entity pulled me toward the painting. Everything went black. Days later, I woke up on a bed covered with cuts and bandages. As per the form that I signed, I was to vacate the premises immediately. My wounds were described as mere side effects, and Pasquale handed me the money in cash. This is what I used to find a place before I could land on my feet. Pasquale did not provide any explanation for the nightmare they put me through, denying everything that has happened and blaming it on hallucinations. He, Dr. Fordrin, and the rest of the personnel also disappeared shortly after, never to be seen again, just like Nolan and Carla. As for Vincent, the last I saw of him on my way out of the facility was a painting of him in a luxurious silver frame. Story 10. My friend sacrificed himself to Aten. Now he is haunting me. I, Mr. Knight, should not be who I am today without the man I shall call Mr. Smith. He was one of my only friends outside the internet, and we were remarkably similar. We both lounged in three-piece suits, enjoyed liquor and pipes, read pretentious literature like Homer and Dante, and could speak endlessly on theological and philosophical matters. But he also pushed me to be a better man. He helped me overcome my social anxieties, especially toward women, and make new friends. Unknown to him, our frequent visits also reminded me not to indulge my more degenerate tendencies. I made Akhenaten my online persona several years ago on a whim. I find his art and theology interesting, and perhaps more appealing than most ancient Egyptian culture, so it seemed suitable. I also added of Alexandria to distinguish myself, but that is not important. For those who do not know, Akhenaten was an ancient Egyptian pharaoh who attempted to reform the Egyptian religion from the worship of many gods to the worship of Aten, the god of the sun disk, who is depicted in iconography as a sun with many arms reaching downward. After his death, his son Tutankhamun, more accurately, the priest advising him, reversed all of Akhenaten's reforms, abandoning him to be rediscovered by archaeologists. Despite my interest in mythology, I have never been pagan or pagan adjacent. I am a devout Catholic, and Akhenaten is just a name I use. Not so for Mr. Smith. I know objectively that I am not at fault, but I cannot help but feel horrified that I was the one who kindled his interest in Akhenaten. For him, it became an obsession. He practically memorized everything he could find on Atenism, and could speak on it at length to anyone willing to listen, which I usually was. But he did not just memorize facts. Most of his rambling was speculation, or philosophizing on matters of subjective or unverifiable opinion, derived partly from our own ideas — we shared a passion for theology and philosophy — and partly from neo-pagan movements. He had developed his own theology of Atenism, and gradually he came to believe in it. Mr. Smith became a genuine worshiper of Aten. At first he insisted that Aten was an allegorical representation of the Platonic nous, but over time the line between allegory and literalism disappeared. For all intents and purposes, his god was the sun. His political, or rather social, views also became increasingly bizarre. He had always indulged in more fringe, disturbing elements of the right wing, but his newfound occultism only made it worse. I remember being very uncomfortable with the way he discussed race. The Greeks believed that African skin is dark because the chariot of the sun once came too close and scorched it. Meanwhile, Egypt regarded the sun as its chief god. Is it not interesting that their skin allows them to bask in the sun's radiance far more effectively than ours? As if our greater intellect were merely compensating for our isolation from Aten. I cannot even begin to dissect the problems with that. In a brief time, as he sunk deeper into his beliefs, he began sunbathing for hours at a time, sometimes spending the whole day just soaking the rays. He eschewed sunscreen, saying that a duratio solaris was more important to him, and he wanted nothing between him and his god. He even installed a sunbathing room in his house, so he could lounge naked in private. He invited me to join him several times, but I always declined. Over time, he gathered a group of like-minded Adonists, and they joined his sunbathing. At first, he only allowed men in the room, but he soon installed a dividing wall so women could fry themselves too. I saw less and less of him. He stopped responding to my messages. When I did see him, it was usually because I visited his house. He quit his job to keep sunbathing, living off his savings. On the days he remembered to eat, he ate little. One day I entered the house and nearly choked on the smell of body odor. Evidently, they had forsaken bathing. The place was covered with drawings and writings and devotional objects. The dividing wall was gone. A dozen or so men and women lay burning naked in the sun. "There is no danger," Mr. Smith explained, his voice creaking like leather. "Our libidos have been baked out." I believed him. While not everyone was unattractive, the endless hours of unprotected sunning had reduced their bodies to such a state that one would have to be truly depraved to be aroused by the sight. They were red as lobsters, and their skin was peeling in layers from their bodies. I wondered how long it would be till they got skin cancer. At least they had no shortage of vitamin D. I tried one last time to get him to see reason, but his mind was as baked as his body. He was convinced that Aiton was pleased by their disturbing sacrifice. So I left, telling him to contact me if he ever came to his senses. We did not see each other on my birthday that year. When it came round after several months, I was worried. I had meant what I said at the time, but I had never missed his birthday, and I missed my friend. So I gathered myself and drove to his house. I could smell the stench before I even got to the door. Something was rotten inside. I covered my nose with as much cloth as I could and entered. I very nearly vomited. The smell was so horrendous. I could not imagine what could possibly have caused it. It stank so bad I could hardly see. What I did see is seared into my mind. The house was now in an even worse state, and horrible fluids covered the floor. The sun worshippers were now gathered around something in the basking room. On the wall was clearly a mural of Aiton, his many arms reaching down to his followers like an octopus. At the base of the wall, under his open arms, lay 2 rotting corpses. I have seen death before. I watched my cat die. I killed chickens. I was with my grandmother when she passed. But this was different. This was a nightmare. Mr. Smith? I gasped. Where are you? With Aiton, croaked a voice. It was not Mr. Smith's. I ran from a house and called the police. I could hardly think at the time, and I still cannot accept it. I was so disassociated that I do not remember how exactly I learned it. Mr. Smith, and one of the female cult members chosen as a sister, had laid under the sun and refused to move. They did not eat, they did not drink. They just lay there and baked till they succumbed to the inevitable. They had sacrificed themselves to Aiton. Horrified as I was, it was not the end. One of the intentions of their sacrifice was that I be brought to the worship of Aiton. One would think that this would be the worst possible way to persuade me, but what happened next is the reason for my post. Not long after what I witnessed, I dreamed of Mr. Smith, like any dream. The details evaporated upon my awakening, but he shifted between a bronze version of the man I knew and that horrid blackened goop of a corpse that I discovered. "Night," said Mr. Smith. "It's so good to see you. It's time for you to join us." He reached out a long, solar arm and grasped mine. It burned, and I instinctively made the sign to cross. I awoke with fright, the nightmare lingering for a few terrible moments before I realized where I was, my heart racing. Except the reason I am here, the reason I am consulted with a priest, and the reason I now clutch to my prayers and sacramentals ever more devoutly, was the pain in my arm. I found a deep burn in the shape of a handprint.